and the Air Force came in and they were dropping napalm. You drop napalm linear to your perimeter. You never drop it over the perimeter, and they did. And it hit within our perimeter and took out about a quarter, if not a third, of my company.
So thank you again for joining us here on the Warrior Rising podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Bunn. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Warrior Rising, also the host of this podcast. I'm here today with our guest, Bill Hawk Albracht. He's got a pretty fantastic story. He has a storied military career from a Vietnam-era individual hailing from the Special Operations community, and of course, has gone on to do great works, both personally and professionally in veteran communities. We're excited to speak with him today. Bill.
Yeah.
I am interested. So I have had an opportunity to speak with more than one Vietnam-era Green Beret in the past 24 hours, which is awesome.
That is.
It's fantastic to understand where our lineage comes from. When we were in the Special Forces qualification course, I went to selection in 2004, and then had 2005, had an opportunity to go through the Q course in 2005, and then spent the better part of a decade operating on an ODA, first as an 18 Echo, then later on as an 18 Fox. I was a terrible Echo. I was a terrible 18 Echo, but a pretty good 18 Fox. And then later on exited as an 11 Alpha, as an infantry officer. But when we were in the Q course, our instructors reached back and talked about Vietnam Green Berets as if they were the gold standard, and the stories about how you guys operated in Vietnam, your efforts for both unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, foreign internal defense, working with foreign armies, is absolutely the gold standard. And as far as I'm concerned, that unconventional warfare, that guerrilla warfare, it was born right in the jungles of Vietnam. You guys are the ones that you were creating doctrine on the ground, and it's always so interesting to have an opportunity to speak with the people that were there, essentially who created the doctrine that would later on be taught to us as young Green Berets in the Special Forces qualification course. The other thing that I think is really interesting, all you guys have cool nicknames.
Oh,
all right. So I talked to John Stryker Meyer. All right, and his is Stryker, yours is Hawk. I had a nickname when I was in the Special Forces. It was Dumbass, but come to find out, that's a ubiquitous term that's used to describe a lot of people. But tell me, how did you earn that moniker?
Well, it's in, and I didn't pick it. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, it was earned, I guess. I mean. Well, it was on this particular battle at this fire base, which ultimately we were overrun.
Yeah.
But it was my first time in combat, and it was November 1969. And my issued call sign was Chicken Wolf. Now, they took a combination of words that Asians would have a difficult time pronouncing together.
Really?
That's how they picked those. They made it so they put two nonsensical words together. Chicken Wolf. What is that? Okay. So I am in the middle of a fire and brimstone coming down around me, mortars and rockets. And I'm calling in to the forward air controller. And he goes, Chicken Wolf, he says, hey, I'm running low on fuel. I got to get out of here, but I got Mike A2s coming in. I said, okay. In the meantime, we're getting hit pretty good.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, probably within 5 minutes, I hear the forward air controller calling Chicken Hawk, Mike A2. And I'm sitting there, and again, this is my first time in combat. And I'm thinking there, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Who would assign a call sign so similar to mine to this area we're working? You know, Chicken Hawk, Mike A2. And I went, wait a minute. I said, Mike A2, this is Chicken Wolf. Are you calling me?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, and he kind of, now, again, we're in the middle of a firefight, and he kind of chuckles. He goes, oh, sorry, Chicken Wolf. I thought your call was Chicken Hawk. And I said, call me Chicken Wolf, Chicken Hawk, or Chicken Shit. I said, just give me some goddamn air power in here now.
Yeah.
And he goes, Roger that, Chicken Hawk. And then Chicken Hawk went to Hawk, and that's how it got.
And you adopted it to Hawk. I did actually have a nickname briefly when I was on team. They kind of had a nickname of Sticky for a while. And the reason they called me that is we sometimes would carry spray glue with us. And we would carry spray glue because every now and again we would create linear flex charges, right? So we'd have these large flex charges that were used with strips of petin, right, or det cord. PETN was the explosive that was used. And a lot of times it would be two pieces of duct tape that have been sticky side down on one another, but there would be a tab so that you could pull it off and then essentially lay it onto a door, usually the locking mechanism, or you could put it diagonally across the door to cut it in half so that you could get into it quickly. Yeah. It's also a very jarring way to wake somebody up. And we always found that it was better. That was usually better than knocking and waiting for him to come and answer.
I agree.
I had found. But we would carry that spray glue with us sometimes because we'd spray it beforehand, particularly if we were trying to open a large gate. It would often help with making sure that it stayed in place. And the cap came off, and we had kind of landed offset on the objective, came and filled on a helicopter, which honestly this was everything I had signed up for, by the way. Like, when I thought about joining the Special Forces, I was like, one day I'm going to land offset on an objective in a Black Hawk helicopter in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I'm going to blow in a gate, and I'm going to get the bad guy. And this particular night, all that happened. That was it. And the only thing that came out of that was the fact that the spray glue came open inside my bag and completely ruined it. And everybody thought that was hilarious. And I couldn't stop talking about my ruined assault pack. And then, from probably what was one of the coolest missions I'd ever been on, I just got a nickname that kind of stuck with me for a little bit. No pun intended when I say it, that it stuck with me. So, yeah. So, on the podcast, we always like to talk a little bit about how we found our ways into the military. Now, what's interesting is when talking to Vietnam era veterans, how you found yourself in the military is it's usually only a couple of ways that it happened back then, right? And there was a draft in place during this time, but I'd love to hear about what it was that you were doing, how you found your way to the military, and more specifically, how you found your way into the Special Forces. It's not like, people aren't just walking off the streets and joining the Special Forces, as far as I knew. So I'd love to hear a little bit what your experience was like, how you found yourself from being a civilian to finding yourself in the military, and more specifically serving in the Special Forces.
Well, I grew up in Rock Island, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River, a Quad City area, they call it, Iowa, Illinois. Home of Blues Brothers, I might add, if you listen to their album.
Okay.
And Rock Island Lines, John Deere, very blue collar community. My father was a welder. And 5 of us, and we really didn't have much going monetarily. Yeah. And we're always fed and clothed, but outside of that, I went to a Catholic high school, Holman High School, graduated in 1966. And at that time, 1965, while Hal Moore, we were soldiers once, the Ai Valley, that was the first major battle of Vietnam. Yeah. Major news. Heard about it when I was still in high school. And I always knew, as grown up as a kid in a blue collar neighborhood, which I'm sure the majority of the people listening to these podcasts can comprehend. You got your flag football, your tackle football, you've got baseball, sandlot baseball. Well, we were very fortunate. We lived next to a state park, Black Hawk State Park, for the part of my childhood. And I loved playing the sports, but I tell you what I really loved. I loved playing Army. I love going in the woods, and we divide up in teams, and one would be the aggressors, one would be the defenders. We'd set up ambushes. Hell, we were doing L-shaped ambushes back then, and we didn't even know what they were. Yeah. And it might be water balloons, it might be BB guns, whatever we had for weapons. And we all knew we were going to be veterans. We all knew we were going in the Army, and that stayed with me. And in high school, I'd excelled at pretty much nothing. I was a very, very average student. Never tried at anything. My most constructive thing I did is played varsity football. Okay. So when graduation started getting close, myself and my best buddy Joe Murphy, well, we knew where we were going to go. We were going to enlist. And my older brother Bob, had been in the Air Force for 4 years. It was out. It was going back into Special Forces. He was going in there. Now he's about 23 years old.
And this was while the Vietnam War was happening.
While everything was cranking up.
So this is interesting because was the draft instated at that time?
The draft was on fire.
So at this time, there's a lot of people in the United States doing everything that they can to avoid getting into the military. But you wanted to be in. You wanted
a sense of duty, a sense of country, a sense of honor, and a sense of adventure. I grew up in this little town. I hardly ever got out of it. I wanted to get out. I wanted to see what the rest of the world was like. And if that meant getting shot at time to time, well, that was all part of the cards that I had to play.
Yeah.
So we decided this is what we're going to do. And again, our country was at war as far as we were concerned. And there were a lot of people didn't want to go, and we didn't mind going. So Joe and I went down to the recruiter, walked in there, and right after graduation, and we did graduate. And he said, "How can I help you boys?" And we said, "Want to be airborne, paratroopers, infantry, and go to Vietnam." And he looked at us like we had two heads apiece.
Yeah.
And and after a while, he figured out, well, we're not screwing with him. So he goes, "Oh, this is your lucky day. Oh, I got 2 slots right here. I don't know if I have them in the morning, and I don't know when I'm going to get any more. Joe, we got to sign now."
Yeah.
So we did. And we went and got our physicals. And we went to Chicago, got sworn in about October of 1966. And we took about 11:45. We were going down to Clarksville, Tennessee, Fort Campbell, which had basic training back there. And every major Army post had basic training.
Yeah, they all had it back then.
Everyone.
Yeah.
So we got on the train and literally took the last train to Clarksville. Got down there, went through basic, and they retested us all over again. Now, the nuns and priests at Allman Catholic High School always said, "Your son is not living up to his potential. He has more than a little intelligence, but he's just not using it."
Yeah.
So I never really paid much attention to that. And the Army tested me, and Joe, and we both did very, very well. And so they said, "Okay, here you go. You're going to take this test." And I said, "What is this?" And they said, OCS test. Now, OCS at that time to me could have meant Oklahoma Cook School. I mean, I had no idea it was Officer Candidate School. I thought all the Army officers all came from West Point.
Yeah.
That's how much I knew. Took it, and not against my will, but I didn't put, I tried hard on the test because my DI told me to. And the minimum score to pass was 115. And I scored 115.
Okay, well, there it is.
Now I'm 18 years old.
Yeah.
And the commanding officer of the basic training company calls 22 of us in out of 250 guys in basic. Said, "Gentlemen," he says, "you all passed the officer candidate test, and you're all going to go to officer candidate school, and try and stay within the combat arms because that's where you're going to be ended up.
Yeah.
Is there any questions?" And I'm in the back of the room. I raised my hand. I said, "Sir, yes, private. What if you don't want to go?"
Yeah.
Because, okay, well, listen, I have a levy, a requirement of 22 slots. I have 22 people here. You're going to OCS. Anything else? No, sir. No, sir. And off I go to Benning School for Boys, Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm still 18.
18 and getting ready to go to OCS and receive a commission.
Yeah. And I always looked older. I was a kid in high school. I had to buy the beer. And I get there, and there's 220 of us standing on the grinder, 6 platoons. And they get out there, and they said, "Look left, look right. The guy on your left and your right won't be here on graduation.
Yeah.
We're going to lose 50% of you." And I go, "I wonder if I should pack my bags now."
Yeah, right.
But it turned out I really took to it. And I got through with 0 problems. And I turned 19 in the middle of August 67, and I was commissioned a 2nd lieutenant August 31st, 1967. And we were able to put in for where we wanted to go. And it was a dream sheet. Where do you want to go? So I put in for the 3rd Special Forces Group, the 1st Special Forces Group, and the 5th Special Forces Group. One was in Vietnam, one was in Okinawa, and one was at Fort Bragg.
Yep.
And by God, didn't they give it to me. At 19 years old, Special Forces. See, you had to be enlisted. You had to be 20 to get in. And that's why I couldn't sign up for it when I was younger. And my brother, Bob, was already in. He was in training at Bragg.
Okay.
So off I go. And once I get there, I was very, very, very fortunate to get in to the Special Forces Officers course.
Nice.
And got into that almost I got there on a Sunday night. On Monday morning, I reported for a school because they were pushing them out so quickly. And I don't mean they were cutting corners. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No. But they only had like 4 classes a year. So they were pushing the guys through as quickly as possible based on that it was tough to get in. A lot of guys didn't. They went to Vietnam without the qualification.
Yeah.
And, of course, they had got different jobs when they got there. So I did. And, of course, I signed up, as every good second lieutenant did at Fort Bragg in Special Forces, to go volunteer to go to Vietnam. And the orders came in, and I went to Thailand.
So I want to backtrack real fast. So you graduate from high school. You're barely old enough to buy a pack of cigarettes. Actually, how old did you have to be to buy cigarettes? What you said it was 66?
There was no requirement.
You could just go in and buy cigarettes?
I used to buy them from my dad when I was 12.
God dang, what a time to be alive. Here I was. I had to wait until I was 18 to buy cigarettes, but I started smoking when I was 6. But I know I grew up in a weird town. But it's interesting you say all that. Like, I was really ne'er-do-well, but found my legs when I was in the military. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's a lot of parallels anytime I meet, people that join the Special Forces as young men, and it's just the backgrounds are all, not too dissimilar from one another.
That's true.
But you're 18, you and your good friend, that you're gonna join the military. You volunteer to join. You volunteer to be airborne. You volunteer to be in the infantry. You find yourself qualifying to become an officer by the skin of your teeth, and here you are at Bragg, off to become a Special Forces officer, and you get pushed out to Thailand. So what's it look like from there?
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And our senior NCOs on my team were going. I was the executive officer,
and you're 19 at this point.
I'm still 19,
man.
And they're going, "Oh, sir, what a deal! This is the original good deal. Oh my God, you're going to enjoy yourself so much." I'm going, "Yeah, that's not exactly where I saw myself being." And so I did, and we trained the Royal Thai Army up in the mountains, northern mountains, and then down on the Malaysian border. There was only one A team down there, and I was executive officer there. And I was about 2 months from, because I had my 2 years fulfilled of active duty as a lieutenant. I'm a first lieutenant now.
Yeah.
And I said, I still have not done what I signed up to do.
And you signed up because you wanted to go to Vietnam.
I did. My country's at war, and this is where I need to be.
Yeah, but as we all know, like you got exactly what you bargained for.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's interesting, when I joined the Army and when I made the decision to be in the Special Forces, that's what I wanted too. Like, I wanted to see combat. A lot of times I felt like I was just at the receiving end of gunfire, and I wanted to flip the script. I wanted to be the one that was doing it. And I chose to be in the Special Forces because I saw these guys, and they were so professional. They were so together, and they just seemed like they had it going on. And I was like, one day I'm going to do it. And I'm going to flip the script, and it's going to be them that's afraid, not me. And I had this idea in my head about what it would be like. And I got all that, and I got what I bargained for. But it was when I got my hands on this thing that I wanted for so long, it was not what I thought it was going to be.
No, it was a bit different.
It's just never what you think it's going to be. So you're in Thailand, you finish up this 2-year stint, and then you figure out a way to make your way.
Yeah, I went to the S1, the personnel, if you will, and I'm pretty sure it was a major. And I said, "Sir, I want to extend one more year," and you could do this back then.
Yeah,
one more year, but only if I can go to Vietnam with the 5th Special Forces. And he looked at me, he goes, "Oh, well, this is your luck." I see, I know, it's my lucky day. I've heard this before. Just give me it where and of course, boom, I end up at the repo depot, the replacement depot in Cam Bay, I believe, or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And I am still not assigned. So, and they were putting guys in the 82nd Airborne. They were putting guys in 101st. 4th Division leg units and non-airborne. And
Ugh, gross.
And I went and saw this major, another major, and I said, "Sir, let me tell you how I got here." And I laid it all out for him. I said, "Please assign me to the Special Forces." And he did. So I went up to Nha Trang, and I got there, and everybody who got to Vietnam that had never been there before had to go to Han Tre Island on the Bay of Nha Trang and go through a 2-week combat orientation course.
Sure.
It was pretty good. It was a pretty good course. Kind of got you used to a few things. So after that, I come back in assignment. I sat down again with another major, and I think it was a lieutenant colonel. "Where do you want to go, young captain?" I said, "I want to go." My brother had been, he's home now, in II Corps, which was the Central Highlands, the mountains of Vietnam, into Laos and into Cambodia.
Yeah.
Hot spots.
Yeah.
And I said, "I want to go to the II Corps, and I want to go to the 2 Mobile Strike Force, the Mike Force. That was legendary in Vietnam and Special Forces. You had your special ops, they were special ops. You had your SOG units, your studies and observations or special operations group, the 5 to 10 man, well, let's say 10-man recon group that would go across country with Asians and American special forces for long recons. You had Delta Project, pretty much the same thing, but in country, and a few of the others. All special projects within Special Forces. And the II Corps Mobile Strike Force had 4 infantry battalions, and they were all mountaineers, and they were all paratroopers. They were all highly trained in combat. They were highly paid, and they were led by American Special Forces. And these guys were absolutely shit hot. And that's what I want to do. I want to be one of you guys.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, well, you see, the thing is, you've never been in combat. Yeah, you want to go to, and we're only taking, you got to prove yourself to get into the Mike Force.
Yeah.
So I ended up in Southern II Corps in the Central Highlands.
Yep.
At a Special Forces camp of Bu Prang, right on the Cambodian border area, as the executive officer, as a junior captain. And every intelligence report said the NVA was coming down from the north. Monsoons were over, so now it's early fall into October, and the NVA was on the move, and they were going to come down through the Ho Chi Minh Trail, through Laos, through Cambodia, come out, and they were going to hit the camp of Bu Prang and then move on to Ban My Thuot, which was a district capital, big target.
Yeah.
So we were preparing, and this is before a lot of satellites and GPS and intelligence gathering. It was pretty rudimentary, what we were getting. But everything pointed at that. So we were preparing for this, and like any one of the other SF troopers, and we had about 15-man team there. We were beefed up pretty good. A big camp, and we had about 500 strikers, Mountaineers, and their families living there, good sized. And the monsoons, every time they come in, you got to rebuild a lot of things. Your sandbags, your parapets, your overhead cover. If it's not concrete, it's going to get damaged in the rain.
Yeah. So
we were in the process of beefing up and getting ready for that when the colonel comes out, and I was also in charge of giving him an intelligence briefing, which I did. And I based the intelligence on what some of these SOG guys would bring back, and they would feed through the system, and I would get it, and plus the CIA had operatives, and I would brief them on that. And everything, again, pointed to the major attack coming our way. And he goes, "Hey, great briefing, Captain. Oh, by the way, you're going to Fire Base Kate for a month." Now, around Bu Prang were 3 fire bases, Annie, Kate, and Susan. And these fire bases were small. It was 3 pieces. 2 155s and 1 105. And what they did is they were mutually supporting each other, and they supported the camp of Bu Prang. In it itself, hardly target worthy, but they were situated out there. They had about 130 each mountain yards from different A camps on loan, plus another 30 artillery guys, an American captain, and a Special Forces and an American NCO that was in charge of the security and keeping that place safe, because you can't shoot a cannon and defend yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
So off I go.
Well, And, I had an opportunity to listen, you had an opportunity to speak at Legacy Acres last night. And, of course, had an opportunity to listen to exactly kind of what happened at Firebase Kate.
Yeah.
And, for those of us that are kind of tuning in, listening to this, it was eventually overrun.
Yes.
One of the things that stuck out to me, well, obviously there was a lot of stuff that stuck out to me about that story, but the thing that I thought was most interesting, I thought was just like a really interesting detail that you provided, is when you showed up there, people were playing volleyball and playing guitars and stuff like that. Now, what's interesting about that is I think a lot of times whenever I describe warfare, and I spent the better part of my adult life going back and forth to Iraq and Afghanistan as part of my military career, both with conventional and special operations forces. And I think people sometimes get the impression that we were just in a roving gunfight at all times.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and I was like, not real. Like there were times that were punctuated by violence and terrible things, and honestly, most of the time, I mean, I've spent entire firefights just trying to fumbling around with a battery, and then and then I'm like, I got the battery, I'm like, the radio's up and running, I'm looking around, I'm like, what's going on? They're like, brother, it's over. You know what I'm saying? This thing is over with, and I was just fiddling around, and but it's interesting one in that it gives you this snapshot that like people were still living their lives and having recreation. But it sounded distinctly like that was what was going on at a special operations, forward operating base. So what was your experience like did you ever have an opportunity to glimpse what was happening in the conventional forces? And as being somebody who was a Green Beret and who had only known their career as being in special operations, did you see kind of a big difference? Did it feel like to you that you were just doing something so vastly different from the people that were in the conventional forces at that time?
Didn't see a lot of them.
Yeah.
I probably learned what I know about the conventional forces, the 4th Division, 101st, when I got home and talking to the guys actually there. And their rear areas were, not much. I mean, they were tents.
Yeah.
And they were, outhouses and things of this nature. And morale was not actually the greatest. But when they went to the field, when they went to the jungle, when they went out to combat to go find the enemy, sharp, alert, ready to go, one big team, and they took care of each other. And there's a lot of things about marijuana and the guys were high and everything. I don't know that happened in the rear. What I'm hearing is it did a lot.
Sure.
But it didn't happen in the field.
Yeah.
It wasn't tolerated in the field.
Yeah.
A guy in a 4th Division, and you got some guy smoking dope, and he's on watch. That's his turn. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They will take an entrenching tool to him.
Same thing. I think General Order number 1 when we were downrange, throughout the Global War on Terror was like no alcohol. Just for me, generally speaking, I was always in situations that had such a high propensity for kinetic action. I was like, I really don't want to be drunk for this. You know what I mean? Like, this is not something I'm not interested in drinking at all. And I always got the impression that was happening on these big mega bases and FOBs where there was like, it literally like 30 miles between you and the nearest guy carrying a gun who had a mind about him to kill you. You know what I mean? So yeah, same kind of stuff, but it's interesting. So we could talk about what happened at Firebase Kate for hours, but I'd love for you to kind of succinctly describe, tell me about that so that the people listening know about it. And kind of after that experience, which must have been formative and defining for you in a lot of ways, what was the rest of your time in Vietnam like as you moved towards moving back into the private sector?
Well, to revert back to combat.
Yeah.
A regular infantryman, again, in the 25th Division, 4th Division, whatever, if they were in one major battle, that was a major deal. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it would maybe a day, like the guys on Quezon, that was huge.
Yeah.
Special Forces were up there. The Marines were up there. The Army was up there. They were under siege for a long time.
It was the same for us, like the Battle of Ramadi or Fallujah. It's like if you were involved in that, everybody was like, damn, but it was few and far in between.
They were.
Yeah.
Somebody would say it was like 90% boredom, 10% terror.
You nailed it.
And so Kate's there. I get there. It's in disrepair. We get it up and running properly almost. We get attacked. And it turns out it was about 5,000 to 6,000 NVA were on their way to hit Buprang. Said, hey, let's knock this fire base out real quick. It didn't go quick for them. And when it got to the point where I couldn't sustain it anymore, I'm asking, please send us some reinforcements. And the request went up, and the Americans, 4th Division was only 100 clicks away. See, no problem. I mean, engage the enemy. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
But they told Nixon was Vietnamization, so they said, stand down. We're going to let the Vietnamese get them out, and the Vietnamese wanted no part of it.
Yep.
So they put in a Mike Force unit, but they didn't put in enough, and those guys really, really, really ran into a buzzsaw. So it came down to us. So I found out one thing. Rely on yourself, and always have plan B. Because plan A, when you can't get any of the support and everything you need, you're going to revert to plan B. So I called a meeting, and I had all the top NCOs that I needed there, which was about 3 of them, the artillery officers, and the mountain yard leadership, because they had their own leaders in place.
Yeah.
And they wanted out. They said, we can't hold this. And I said, believe me, I know. I said, gentlemen, we got 3 ways to go here. 1, surrender, and that's just never going to really happen.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Number 2, die in place, but to what end?
Yeah.
Number 3, attempt a breakout, and we are going to do a breakout. Now, you notice I didn't say, so who's in favor? Can I see a show of hands here? Okay,
Yeah.
That's not what leadership is.
Yeah.
You lead from the front. And we started making the plans. Now, first, our permission was denied, but they finally came along, and then we had a plan on paper, first shot fired, it all went to hell, but we somehow still, by the hand of God, got out of there. And that was 5 days of nonstop combat.
Just continuous fighting.
And so I went back to Buprang, and the NVA followed us back there, and they put that camp under siege. So this is battle number 2.
Yeah.
So then, and you will enjoy this.
Okay.
In the Trang, because you're talking about the rear areas,
Yeah.
they actually had an ice cream shop
Yeah.
in Vietnam in the Trang. And we all joked about, call it the Dairy Queen. Now, OIC is officer in charge. So this thing, this Firebase Kate, we managed to break out, and we only lost 1 man. That was truly a miracle.
And when you told the story, I mean, there was thousands of regulars. And
About 5,000.
Yeah, they had an artillery regiment. I mean, like, brother, if somebody just had a recoilless rifle and a Dishka in Afghanistan, I was like, these guys mean business. You know, there's 30 of them. You guys were fighting thousands. You brought on Spooky, which the modern complement to that is the AC-130.
Yeah.
By the way, anybody that talks about Spooky, when they talk about that arc of tracers and how it sounds like a chainsaw going off in the distance, boy, howdy, when somebody says that, I'm like, my God, they, in fact, have gotten close air support from an AC-130. Yeah. It is an unmistakable sound.
And it can't be replaced by anything.
Not a thing. I'll tell you, if you were to play it right now in the middle of the night, I would pop out of I would wake up like a damn demon if somebody just played that noise, right? Yeah. So interesting. But but apologies. Go ahead.
Oh, well, anyway, the group commander, Iron Mike Healy, Colonel Healy, full colonel.
Yeah. He
flies out to personally congratulate me on getting these guys out. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a kind of a smart ass, I guess. And he lands, and men didn't hug back then.
Sure.
Kind of wish for those days again. But anyway, men didn't hug back then.
Yeah.
And the team is lined up. We're not under attack at this time. It's pretty peaceful. And I'm standing out there, and he comes up to me and hugs me. And he said, Captain, the finest traditions of Special Forces, I can't believe. He says, how you pulled that off. He says, anything you want, any position you want. You want to come back and be my aide? Any position, you name it, and it's yours. And I said, sir, I'd like to be the OIC of the Dairy Queen in the Trang.
What did he say? This is Iron Mike. I've worked out at this guy's gym at Fort Benning. I've worked out at the Iron Mike gym at Fort Benning. This is named after this man. And you were giving him, you were giving him shit.
I was giving him no respect. He was not amused.
He's the one that came up and hugged you anyways, you know?
He came up before I said it.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and that smile just dropped. And this heart, and I went, oh God, I screwed up.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm afraid that position's already taken. What else? And I said, I want to go to the 2-Corps Mike Force. Done. Did an about face, got a helicopter, flew away.
Yeah.
And I said, and the guys are going, we can't believe this.
Yeah.
I said, well, I actually did go and I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So stayed for the siege, and we held on. And the NVA we'd beat them up so bad at Kate with our close air support and arc lights, B-52 strikes, that they were weakened when they got to Buprang, and we just continued to weaken them more. So they had to lick their wounds and withdraw back to Cambodia, back to their safe havens. And then I went to the Mike Force.
Yeah.
And that was my dream job. This was it. It's
the big show.
This is what you were talking about?
Yeah.
When you in your mind, what you want to do?
It's what
this is it.
This is what I wanted. This is what I bargained for. I bet you got it too.
I did. And I was assigned to the 3rd Mike Force Battalion as one of the company commanders. Now, E7s were running companies back then. And I was a executive officer of the battalion commander who was a senior captain. And we went out, and nothing to write home about, some minor firefights. But we went out in a battalion, a kind of a recon in force. Came back, and that captain left. I became the battalion commander. We went out again.
How old were you at this time?
21.
You were a 21-year-old battalion commander?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, captain.
Yeah. Bananas.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was back then.
Yeah, no, that's how it was.
But then on April 1st, 1970, Nixon had already ordered the Cambodian incursion.
Yep.
And they were over there kicking ass. They went into Cambodia, and all the safe havens that the North Vietnamese army had over there, they were really hurting them.
Yeah.
And the camp of Dak Siang, 2 words, in the northern mountains of 2-Corps, April 1st, they hit them with about a regiment and a half, and they came within a whisker of completely overrunning the camp.
Yeah.
But they held out. Gary Byrick was a medic there. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor for his efforts there. Gary's not with us anymore, but he was a friend of mine and a tremendous guy. Another guy, Luttrell, Sergeant Luttrell, was up on a kind of a mountaintop and with the Vietnamese Rangers. All the officers were dead. He was the only American left advisor, and he had a battalion of Arvin Rangers. He took them out. He received the Medal of Honor also. Well, we were inserted a battalion south, a few miles south of the camp, and our job was to get on the ground, 1st Battalion, get on the ground and maneuver up behind and get in the enemy's back pocket and draw them away from the camp, therefore relieving the pressure. So the 1st Battalion went in. That was a combination of American Special Forces and Australian SAS, Australian Special Forces. It was our international battalion.
Yeah, yeah.
I was in the rear. I had been out, and it was 30 days out, 7 days stand down. And all hell broke loose when the 1st Battalion went in. They landed on a hot LZ. They landed on this LZ, and they landed where there was machine gun pits dug in. And they had to fight to clear their own LZ, and casualties, of course. And I went to our colonel, Franklin Collins. And I said, Colonel, I'd like the volunteers to be the first replacement for the first officer that is medevac out. Thank you, Huck. I would very much appreciate that. As I turned around and walked out of the orderly room, I was walking back to my bunk, my hooch. Captain Albracht, report to the TOC.
Yeah.
Captain Rao just got the shit shot out of him, and you're going in. And before the sun got low in the sky, I was on the ground with 1st Battalion. And we got into a buzzsaw. We had about 400 men, and they hit us on the ground with hundreds and 1,000 guys. And the thing was, unlike Kate, we weren't dug in. We were fighting
just out in the open.
Infantry.
That's wild.
Jungle.
Yeah.
And fighting infantry, fire maneuver, light infantry, and moving forward the entire time. And at night, of course, we dug in properly.
Yeah.
But we fought him, and then at one point we got into such a bad situation, we were running low on water, and I can't begin to tell you what it's like not to have water.
Yeah.
When you are so thirsty, it is literally the only thing you think about is water.
Yeah.
And we're getting to that situation. We were down maybe a quarter canteen a man, and we were being penetrated. Our perimeters being penetrated. We were vastly outnumbered, but we were pushing them back. We reallocate. And then they had a massive attack, and the Air Force came in and they were dropping napalm. You drop napalm linear to your perimeter. You never drop it over the perimeter, and they did. And it hit within our perimeter and took out about a quarter, if not a third, of my company. And this huge, I'm in a fighting position. I see the canister tumble, and I go, "Oh my God, it's short!" And this tremendous fireball, and I dove to the bottom of the fighting position as the heat and the fire passed over me, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe anymore because it sucks all the oxygen out.
Yeah.
I came up, and it was devastation, just incredible. That's the bad news. The only shred of good news was that attack that the NVA were launching at us, that major attack, was decimated also. We regrouped. The guys that were burned to death were the lucky ones. The survivors, those yards, the medics, God bless the Special Forces medics. I'd rather have them work on me than any doctor over there. We had morphine. We carried syringes of morphine. I'm sure you did too. And they would hit these guys with morphine, and you give a certain amount, they'll die.
Yeah.
So they would give them the max amount of morphine they could, the burn victims, and it didn't hardly even take the edge off. They were in so much incredible pain. The NVA was in disarray. We were bringing in chopper after chopper after chopper and loading the burned on them, and got them out of there. And we got more ammo, no water yet. And we regrouped and we refinished it. And the battalion commander, which was a major in the Australian Army, called us together and said, "Gentlemen, we're kind of in a fix, kind of in a bind. And we very much might be overrun. We just can't sustain what we were sustaining." And I'm thinking, is this a pep talk? What am I missing here?
Yeah.
You know? And all the war Australians, they don't have NCOs with them. They're all warrant officers.
Yeah.
And they're all professional and great guys.
Sure.
And my team sergeant, E8 Billy Ledbetter, what a guy. And he says, if we get overrun, the best thing to do. Now, I'm not kidding when I say this. He said, the best thing to do is throw down your weapons, put up your arms, and surrender. And I looked at Ledbetter, and he rolled his eyes at me, and I looked at the warrant officers and the Australians, and they're going, what the hell did I just hear? And I'm walking back, and we were at the tip of the spear, our particular company. I said, I will not do that, and I'm not going to tell anybody to do that. We will die with our boots on.
Yeah.
He said, you got that right, sir. That's how bad he perceived it. Later that afternoon, about 3 o'clock, and it gets dark around 5:30, the 4th Battalion of the 2 Corps Mike Force landed within our perimeter. Now we had twice as many men. So it was foxhole, in a zigzag, foxhole around. And the battalion commander was Rich McDonald, Big Mac. And he and I were drinking buddies, and an offshoot of that, 1969, we caused a ruckus at the Air Force Officers Club and played coup and ended up behind bars temporarily, drunk and disorderly. But Mac and I were good friends. And
it sounds like that was the case.
So we literally was able to push out.
Yeah.
We broke out of their ring and we moved forward, and then headquarters said, split up. 1st Battalion, you continue your route to Dak Siang, clear as you go. 4th Battalion, crosses the river, well, it's a big-ass stream. and continue on a pincer movement, come around and try and marry up with each other. Wasn't a good plan because we had now maybe 700 men, and now we're going to use down about 350 each. That's not good.
Yeah.
But we did it, and we then, once we split, we got hit hard, and we had to dig in, and we were there for several days. And somewhere in that transition, the command shifted to me. I was now the battalion commander, and I was making the shots, calling in the airstrikes, and going. I don't know exactly how it happened. I have a hunch. And anyway, I became a battalion commander. Once again, it was untenable. We couldn't hold it. They couldn't get us any more ammo in. Water, again. The only two things you need in the jungle, water, which you can get from a stream if you can get there.
Yeah.
And ammo. Food, you can get by without it. And they said, we can't get you any reinforcements in. You're going to have to break out yourselves. And this had 3 not too steep hills, slopes around it. But on the backside was, it was like a 45-degree angle, and you just weren't going to attack up it. And we just didn't think about going down it. Well, what had happened is the NVA had a hospital, a division-sized hospital, I should say regiment-sized hospital, dug in that vicinity, and they were fighting tooth and nail to defend it. We didn't know this at the time, and get rid of us. So at a juncture, I gave the order. I said, gentlemen, take what we need. We'll leave the crap behind. We got to make a break.
Yeah.
And we went off down the hill. I stayed behind to call in the airstrikes and that. And the guys went down, boom, they ran into NVA, dug in. I was there long enough. I ended up, not by choice, the last man on the hill. And I saw the NVA coming in. I was able to call in a couple airstrikes, slid down the hill. The guys that were down there were pinned down in a bunker system. I said, let's maneuver out of this. So let's back up and withdraw and flank it around, which we did. The NVA chasing us down the hill ran into the bunker system, and they didn't much have good communication because the two of them got in a firefight.
Oh my gosh.
Which was just great.
Hey, best of luck for you. Hey, listen, I'd have left them to it. You know what I mean? I'd have been like,
he did.
Yeah, let's let these guys sort this out between the two of them.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So we were able to, and then of course there was more of them, and we did be able to fight our way into the camp.
Yeah.
And we were a pretty sad lot by then. I mean, we were guys.
I'm sure.
Really, our guys were shot up, and we had hardly any ammo left. So that was battle 2, and then I got hit the 3rd time, and they pulled me out, and that was my last combat.
So, once again, we kind of big through line here. You got what you bargained for.
I got more than I bargained for.
You got more than you bargained for.
But I was trained, and you understand this more than anybody. We were trained for these situations.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're trained for them and you let your training go into gear, even when I was a Secret Service agent, I was in the office of training them. I said, when you get in these situations, let your training take over.
Yeah.
And it'll come to you. And that's exactly what you did in your theater of operations and what I did.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I think back on the times where I was in combat, after it was all said and done, even when I had done good, even when they gave me awards for some of the stuff, I would get in situations where I felt like a coward or I'd done poorly, and I'd get an award for it. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, what the hell is going on? And it was this, and when I finally was out of the Army and I looked back on it and I had this 10,000-foot view, I wanted all these things. I wanted what I'd seen in the commercials, same thing as you. I was playing Army in the woods with my friends, dressing up, and then I wasn't playing it anymore. I was doing it. And I told people, I was like, I'm going to join the Special Forces. I'm going to be a Green Beret. And some people scoffed. Some people said, best of luck. Some people believed in me. But I always found that when I always got more than I bargained for, and it was never, when you caught this thing, it's like, what are you going to do it's like a dog chasing after a car. What are you going to do when you actually catch it?
But you never got too much.
Never too much. No, I always wanted more. I always wanted more. But as I look back on it, I think to myself, I was like, I don't think there was ever a time when you would have kept chasing those cars. You would have kept chasing those cars. So tell me about your transition out of the military and back into the private sector.
Oh, the Army, they were going to send me to the career course, and I had been in like 4 years.
Yeah. How old were you at the time?
I was August then. I was 22 when I got out.
Okay.
But I knew I had no college.
Yeah.
I had a high school education. I knew it was just a matter of time before the RIF, the reduction in force, would come in, and they would be booting guys out every day.
Yeah.
So I did. I got out, and I became an unemployed college freshman, former captain in charge of 400 men. Now and I took to drinking and fighting and, let's just say, dating ladies.
Sure. Seeing people socially.
Yes,
Yeah.
not necessarily in that order.
No.
And I was suffering in my own mind, in my own way, from post-traumatic. However, that was not a thing then, and nobody knew about it. And people would say, you've changed. I said, "Oh, nothing wrong with me. You're the one that's got a problem. Let me tell you about and
Yeah.
I'm sure you're looking in a mirror right now. You know how this goes.
Yeah, no, I get it.
And I worked through them on my own. And I had to self-medicate sometimes.
Yeah.
And get through them. And now all of a sudden, I ended up getting married with a child on the way. And now I had more responsibility. And then that's a sobering effect.
It is.
But the biggest one, after I graduated from college, now I'm 26, pushing 27, now I'm 27, is I became a special agent with U.S. Secret Service. I had to hang it all up. So to answer your question, you asked me what time it is, I tell you how to build a clock, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, when I first got out, I was pretty screwed up.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it. I didn't know I was. And the other guys, and there was a lot of veterans back then, my Lord, probably 10% of the male population in the United States had served, or 10% of the population had served. So there was a lot of guys going to college that were going on the GI Bill, and we had little veterans clubs, and nobody was in there talking about, oh yeah, and then one day this happened. It was funny things.
Yeah.
And you would commensurate together, and everybody dealt with their problems from then in a different way. I like to say, I took everything, the horrific memories and people dying and burned and all that, and I put them in a closet, and I put all those memories in a closet, and I padlocked it, and I nailed it shut. And now I have to get on with my life, and that's what I did then, but this is what I'm doing now, and I proceeded. But then again, some days, and you never know what's going to happen. A sound, a smell, a turn of phrase, and that door would come open, and something would come out. And I can't say it was a flashback, but it was a memory. It would come out, and I would, oh Lord, I do remember that. I remember that distinctly. And you dealt with it. Yes, in my mind's eye, I remember this. That is what happens. That's what happened to Frankie. I remember what happened to Frankie. Yeah, okay, let's put that back in the closet now. And you put it back in the closet, and you go to close that door, but see, that door once open, it'll never go back all the way. So it stays open a little bit. And as these things come out, once every 6 months, once every 6 days, once every 6 hours, you never knew. The door would get open a little bit wider when you try to put those memories back in. And then in 2008, I was retired from the Secret Service. I had left Ford Motor Company, that job, and I was at home, and the door came completely open and off the hinges. Everything came out. Now, I didn't climb a tower and start shooting people.
Yeah.
I just started writing about it. I started writing about it, not to write a book, no, just for my family, because some of the battles I was in made a lot of news, a lot of ink. So I started writing about it, and in the writing, in the doing, it was cathartic. So I would say to guys now, put your thoughts on paper. 50 years, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, your family is going to remember your service and wonder what you did. Wouldn't you like to have some notes from somebody in your family who was in the Civil War, or God bless the American Revolution?
Yeah.
Things of this nature.
This is interesting. How old were you in 2008?
Oh, Lord. Well, I was born in 48, so 60.
Yeah. So you went from 24 to 60 without that door swinging wide open.
Wide open.
Wide open.
It got out.
Yeah.
There's a saying among Vietnam veterans, and once you find out a guy is, you say to him, the first guy will say, so, when were you there? And the second guy will say, last night.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that going on at the time. And I think why that is it was a very, very difficult time to be a veteran.
Yeah.
We were demonized in TV and movies and books and everything you could think of, baby killers, warmongers, drug addicts. We were continually put upon. Now, I'm not whining. I'm just telling you the way it was.
And I'm glad you brought it up. And we talked about this last night after you had an opportunity to speak. And this is why I think it's so important now more than ever. You know, this is going to be the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And there's only a handful of these guys left alive that jumped in.
Yeah.
You know, the special they just made on Apple TV about the guys that flew the planes?
Masters of the Air.
None of them are alive.
No.
None of them. None of them.
No.
There's their legacy painted all over TV. Not a single one of them's alive to see it. And this is why it's important that Vietnam era veterans have an opportunity to talk now. I had the same discussion with John Stryker Meyer. This was not a popular war.
No.
You know, even with some of the service members, draftees who didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. And there was a long period of time where nobody talked about it. 20 years probably at least before anybody was even wanted to hear it mentioned. And then, like you said, when the Vietnam War was depicted in movies, television, all these different things, it was never in a flattering light. Not that I saw.
No.
And you know, as a GWAT veteran, I came back and I was celebrated. If I were to have shown up in uniform in an airport, I wouldn't have gotten out of there sober. Everybody would have stopped me to buy me a drink. My stepfather, who's a Vietnam veteran, had several tours in Vietnam, conventional guy, but I mean, you know, fantastic, you know, shot several times. He's a hero. And when he was in the airport the first time in uniform, he took his uniform off and he put it in the trash can and he put his civilian clothes on because he was afraid he was going to be spit on.
I've heard those stories. I've heard those stories.
And I can't understand it. And I never experienced what that was like. And I thank God for it. And I'm so proud of my service and so proud to be an American. But the fact of the matter is there was always somebody there to say, welcome home to me, somebody there to like tell me that I had done a good job and to assure me that I'd done the right thing, regardless of how people felt about the war or anything else that was happening. And I tell you, whenever I see a Vietnam veteran out in the wild, he's got his hat on or he's got something that identifies that he's a Vietnam veteran, mm-hmm. I stop dead in my tracks and I tell him, welcome home, because I know nobody said that to him when he was coming back, you know?
Speaking of that, in 1996, we had a Special Forces reunion at Bragg. And it was a drunken affair, as you can well imagine.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of good times. Guys I hadn't seen in years. Well, when we went to the more formal affair, where people actually got dressed up, there was Bo Greitz. Bo Greitz was a full colonel, and he was a legend in the Special Forces. And I'd met him in passing in the Trang. And I said, geez, there he is again. So I went up to my Colonel Greitz. I said, Bill Albracht, I met you at the Nha Trang Officers Club back in 1970 or whatever it was. And he goes, oh, you were with the 5th Group in Vietnam? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, shook my hand. He said, welcome home.
Yeah.
26 years later, that's the first time I ever heard it. That's the first time I was stunned. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Thank you. And of course, it's what we say to each other now all the time. And I passed it on, and I don't know where it came from him. But you're absolutely right. There's nothing better you can say to a Vietnam veteran than welcome home.
Welcome home. Welcome home. I asked this to all the guests on our podcast. What is something that you've read, maybe a piece of inspiration, could even be a podcast or television show, something out there that you think would be helpful, or you personally have found helpful for transition? It sounds like your transition almost didn't start until 2008. And as we all know, it's an ongoing process. Your transition from the military into the private sector is perpetual. It does not stop. What is something you've read, something you've seen, something that's been important to you for that transition process?
The guy I joined the Army with in 1966, Joe Murphy.
Yeah.
He wrote a book, and it's called The Last Vietnam Veteran. And in that book, he bases it on true characters, and maybe 20% of them are fictional.
Sure.
Because he served in Vietnam too. And it is, if you want to understand what Vietnam veterans are about, their backstories and their stories over there, it is a real insight into what the guys were like. I can't say, I think the most important thing that I should have done, but I didn't do, was sit down and seek a little help.
Yeah.
I was working as a bouncer in a bar. I know it's hard to believe. And I would get into 2 or 3 knockdown dragouts a week.
Yeah.
And that was therapy. I felt good. And I should have known.
Yeah.
Something's going on. And I didn't. I just thought, well, I'm going for a tough stretch right now.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I took the job of the Secret Service and raised my right hand, and now I'm carrying a gun and a badge, and I can't do any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
That was when you get hit by a cosmic 2x4. You got to straighten up and fly right.
Yeah.
Up until then, I'd
all bets off.
Throw down at the drop of a hat. So I think the lesson here is the VA is there. Some are better than others.
Yep.
We're fortunate here in Iowa City to have an outstanding one, and seek the help. And I'm not saying you got to hold hands, adopt a puppy, plant a tree, and sing Kumbaya, hold it. Just see what's available, because some of these things can be just talked about.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the biggest thing I see a lot of Vietnam veterans suffer from is survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
And it is almost incurable.
Yeah.
You can only make them feel so much. But I was in combat and my buddy got killed. It should have been me. I wasn't in combat. I should have been in combat, but I served in Vietnam. I should have done more while I was there. I didn't go to Vietnam. I was stateside in Germany or something. I dodged the draft. I didn't. That's kind of last on the list. But the survivor's guilt of the guys who are actually there is prolific.
Yeah.
And I personally never really had that, but I know almost every guy that is a good friend of mine, not in special forces, but other does have that, and that is something that needs to be talked through.
Yeah. And then, one last question for you. If same thing, if you were to give just one piece of advice, just one nugget, one good piece of advice, and I think you might already touched on it a little bit earlier, to somebody who's transitioning and we might have an inkling that they're going to be going through it, or for that matter, if you could go back in time and give yourself, that 24-year-old kid, a single piece of advice, what would it be?
I think a lot of it would come to what you're doing now with Warriors Rising. Here is, a hand up, not a handout. This is truly a situation where if you have an idea and you can put your thoughts on paper, develop some kind of a business plan, and you have something that hadn't been done, or you can take something that has been done and make it better, there's a place you can go with that.
Yeah.
There was nothing like that. There was nothing like Small Business Administration. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of things that the hands-on veteran organizations that directly benefit somebody who's getting out and is looking for their way.
Yeah.
And even if they've been out for 10, 15 years, if they find something somewhere that they're very good at and there's a demand for, here we got a vehicle to take them down that path. I think this is just an amazing organization.
Yeah, and we're just one. There's not hundreds of VSOs like us. There's thousands, and although there's probably only a handful that help veteran entrepreneurs, whether it's hey, listen, you need to get outdoors, you need to be rehabilitated, you need a mechanism to exercise mental health, whatever the case may be. There's, like I said, not hundreds, but thousands of VSOs out there. Bill, what's a great way for people to learn more about you, learn more about your story, reach out if there's an opportunity to do so, this kind of stuff?
Oh, unabashed plug.
Yeah.
I have a website.
Okay, great.
www.captain-hawk.com. So it's more information on there than when anybody really needs to know about anything.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm sure
Yeah.
people will definitely be checking it out. And then, of course, for anybody that's tuned in, if you want more information about Bill, make sure to check out the podcast. If you want information about our programs for Warrior Rising, please don't hesitate to email programming@warriorrising.org. And then, of course, you can head over to our website, warriorrising.org, to find out more about our programs. Sign up and become one of our veteran entrepreneurs. Join the tribe. You won't regret it. Bill, listen, I can't thank you enough for setting aside time to speak with me today. Like I said, these are stories that need to be told now more than ever, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with me. It's been great.
My honor.
Yeah, thank you so much.